We all know the story of the legendary beasts, that there was like this very pretty tower in Ekrutik City. It caught on fire, burned down. There were some evolutions inside. Ho-Oh was like, yo bros, I'm just gonna go and revive you. And now the legendary beasts were born and they go and roam around Johto and stuff. So there, oh my god, what is that? Okay. That's not an evolution. Those don't look like Vaporeon, Jolteon, or Flareon. Well then. So we actually get to see in the most recent Pokemon Generations episode that there are Pokemon dying in the burned tower, and we tragically like get to watch them die. But it's cool though. Ho-Oh comes and saves them later. But at the same time, like that doesn't look like any Pokemon we've really seen before, and it's certainly not evolutions, which means that theory that has been around since like Gold and Silver version is no more, maybe? Who knows? So let's go and look into this. So now what we need to do is we need to start from the beginning. Let's figure out how this theory came to be and what even strengthened it in later years. So first off, the second generation didn't have a lot of Pokemon, so there weren't a lot of candidates for Pokemon that were going to become the legendary beasts, and there were only 3 that really stuck out because we need a water type, we need a fire type, we need electric type Pokemon, and they all need to be related in some way and also available in the game. Okay, we got the evolutions. So naturally it just makes a lot of sense. They get revived, they get like magical legendary Ho-Oh powers, get ridiculous forms, and then that's how it works. Now also in the future generations, it got even crazier because we see Flareon, Jolteon, and Vaporeon. They have the abilities Flash Fire, Volt Absorb, and Water Absorb. Well, what are the hidden abilities of the legendary beasts? We find out in the 5th generation, Flash Fire, Volt Absorb, and Water Absorb, which are going to be the same as the evolutions. So that was just like, oh, confirmed. Thank you for the teaser, Game Freak. GG. Now, here's the weird thing, though. These are not released abilities, so we don't know if they're going to be released with this. It's also just kind of like something sitting in the background, which means the existing Entei, Raikou, and Suicune aren't really directly related because their hidden abilities haven't been unlocked yet, and it kind of reminds me of what happened with Articuno, Moltres, and Zapdos. Interestingly enough, Zapdos used to have a different hidden ability. He used to have the Lightning Rod ability, ended up getting changed to Static to go with the Snow Cloak and Flame Body of the other two, but it does show that hidden abilities, until they are released, are subject to change. Now, while it isn't likely, it just shows that there's some volatility there that might not work perfectly with it being the evolution theory. And also, we can think about Pokemon in the future, that 4th generation is now canon with the 2nd generation because of Heart Gold, Soul Silver, and as more Pokemon are discovered all the time, you know, they just kind of work their way back in. So maybe they were undiscovered Pokemon at the time. We see with Pokemon Sun and Moon, we have a whole new batch of Pokemon. Every generation does the same thing, and even with like generations after, you know, we see Kecleon in the 2nd generation, we see Donphan in the 1st generation, so there's always existing Pokemon that haven't been completely researched and identified yet when it comes to Pokemon. And when we look at the whole lore behind the Burned Tower, the Pokemon have always been nameless. That we can even see that, you know, these are silhouetted Pokemon. These are nameless, unnamed, mysterious creatures that ended up dying and coming back as legendary Pokemon. And I mean, do you see those flames? I ain't going inside that burning building just to find out which 3 Pokemon are dying. Hell, the only reason why we know 3 Pokemon got torched in that building is because Ho-Oh came and revived them. Now, to be fair to the original theory, this could actually work in favor of the evolution theory as well, that we can see that the nameless Pokemon are intentionally silhouetted. That's more about imagination. You have to wonder what Pokemon were in there because we have no idea as to what could have happened. Now, another thing that did contribute to the evolution theory is that the Kimono Girls, they have the evolutions, and you can actually see in the trailer that one of them is crying. So that could also be symbolic of like the evolutions that got left behind or something like that. So that could be something, or maybe we aren't supposed to ever know which Pokemon they were. That Game Freak is throwing us little hints and teasers and stuff, but at the same time, that's why we didn't see shadows of Vaporeon, Jolteon, and Flareon to like absolutely confirm it. We have these just random dog-looking things that are in there, and that's because it looks like we will never know, just due to the nature and the mysteriousness and the power of the flames, and also just how Ho-Oh works and stuff. So that is something interesting to consider, but also we could keep going deeper and see if we find out anything else. So one thing that's really interesting about the story of the Burned Tower is that there was lightning, fire, and water that were involved with the tower's destruction. That lightning set it on fire, and then it became on fire, and then a heavy, fierce storm came out of nowhere, and then put out the flames. Now, this is actually represented in the Pokemon Generations episode, which shows it to be more canon than theory, because that was thought to have some symbolism to Raikou, Entei, and Suicune. So now what we can do is see maybe it doesn't have to be, you know, those elemental Pokemon. It doesn't have to be an electric type Pokemon becoming Raikou. It's a symbolic thing that, okay, electricity was involved, so that was a part of like the reincarnation. Also, Ho-Oh's like a rainbowy kind of Pokemon. It doesn't have to comply to that. It can give whatever typing to whatever Pokemon's reviving, apparently. So maybe we don't have to end our search there. All we have to kind of do is just look for Pokemon that have a quadruped body, and the Pokedex helps us out right there. So if we're just sticking to the first 2 generations and we're going off of what we see in the Generations episode, the Pokemon looks more similar to Houndoom than anything, and also kind of Houndour, but at the same time, Houndoom has those like ferocious horn things, and we see that the Pokemon that are in the building don't have the horns, and at the same time, the muzzle of Houndour is a little too short. You know, it doesn't have that generic dog-looking thing, which does bring up an interesting point. When it comes to like generic dog-looking figures in Pokemon, we don't really have those. That the muzzles are always stylized in some kind of way, or they have like a different kind of snout. When we look at Pokemon like Zoroark, Furfrou, or even there's not that many dog Pokemon in general as well. So there we go, guys. We still don't have an existing counterpart to even the Pokemon silhouettes that were burned, which kind of just gives more to, it's just the thing. It's the imagination. It's what was perceived to have died there instead of what actually died there, and then became the legendary beast. However, we can look at the final result. We know what came out of the ashes, so maybe we could try to reverse engineer this to see what went into that fire. And including 4th generation, including all the generations potentially, I'm thinking that the closest Pokemon based off designs are going to be Luxray, Arcanine, and then Ninetales. So, I mean, Arcanine Ninetales does make the most sense if we're just going off of, like, 2nd generation stuff, and it kind of matches with more the face shape than anything. Like, if we look at what died in the fire, they all looked like dogs, but Entei doesn't resemble any of those. So I'm guessing if we just go off of Arcanine, you know, it kind of has that fire typing to it. It also has the more flat face and could have gone all crazy and stuff. Who knows? It seems more agile and powerful like that. Same with Luxray, we just have the electricity working for us, and also kind of a cat-like beast kind of Pokemon that could have also gotten a form change. And then the elegance of Ninetales just kind of matches the elegance of Suicune. And I guess since we have a Alolan Ninetales as a possibility, Ninetales is a very adaptive Pokemon. Fire and ice makes water, so hey, Ninetales confirmed, am I right, guys? But now here's a weird thought. What if the Pokemon that burned up in the tower were actually Raikou, Entei, and Suicune to begin with? Because that is a very real possibility. That we know throughout the games and throughout the anime and throughout all various aspects of Pokemon that there can be multiple legendary Pokemon. We have Lugia and its baby. We also have these shiny forms of these same Pokemon. So in Zoroark Master of Illusions, that we have shiny Entei, Raikou, and Suicune. Well, we've already seen normal Entei, Raikou, and Suicune, so there's no way that they could exist as both shiny and not shiny, which means there's multiples of this species out there. So that could have just meant that they were already existing in that building when it burned down, and then there's other forms of those beasts running around and stuff, because that is a real possibility. Like, that was what I was wondering. When I first saw the movie, I'm like, okay, how is it possible for them to exist shiny and non-shiny unless there's multiples? And if there's multiples, then there's a chance that it just happened that way, and Ho-Oh doesn't have any crazy legendary gifting power. It was just like, oh, it's dead, it's alive, and now it's the same thing again. And even if you want to kind of get crazy with it, we can go back into Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, and then that means we get to capture the legendary beasts in the Hoenn region. Now, true, it is a Hoopa ring, and Hoopa can do, like, crazy teleportation and stuff, but maybe Hoopa's just grabbing other legendary beasts. You know, the ones in Johto region are still in Johto, the shiny ones are still running around and stuff, or maybe there's just a big amount, because there is a chance that you can encounter a shiny legendary Pokemon from Hoopa's rings, so it grabs one from the 5th generation, or it grabs one from 2nd generation, or it grabs the one from somewhere else. You know, that's just how it could work. So maybe there's just dozens of these legendary beast trios running around and stuff, because they are existing Pokemon their own way, and they're just powerful because they are naturally powerful. I mean, if you go way far back, Pokemon like Dragonite, Pokemon like Arcanine are just feared for their power, and they're seen as legendary Pokemon. We can even see this in the Pokemon Generations trailer, that they are feared, they're seen as way too powerful, that something just can't come back to life or be gifted by Ho-Oh and not have too much power for man to control, therefore man must fear it kind of idea. But what if that's just what caused these things to be legendary? The whole lore behind this is that, oh, we thought they were normal Pokemon, but then they came back to life, so that means all Entei, Raikou, and Suicune must be legendary beasts of untold power and stuff like that. And also, when you think about it, these Pokemon were hanging out where legendary Pokemon live as well. That the story goes, you know, Ho-Oh has the Bell Tower, also known as the Tin Tower, and then Lugia has the Burn Tower. Before it burned down, it was the Brass Tower, and they would chill up there, and they used Ecruteak as their home. And then Morty's ancestors would actually be able to talk to them and, like, engage and, like, keep the balance between people and Pokemon alive and stuff. So this is just, like, legendary Pokemon hangout time, which means that Entei, Raikou, and Suicune could have been hanging out in those towers. Unfortunately, shenanigans happened, they died, and then that's how it was. So that's what we're looking at. Interestingly enough, like, the evolution theory is something that I wanted to do a video about, just seeing how it was possible for it to not be that way, because it seems almost too obvious. And I feel that with the Pokemon Generations episode, that really, like, okay, I have to do this video now to keep it relevant, because I was planning on doing this video, like, a couple weeks from now. But this really sped it up, and it gave me more to talk about in a really fun way, because even without the Pokemon Generations episodes, there's still for and against evolutions. With the Pokemon Generation episode, it's for and against the evolutions as well, because the Kimono Girl, that was, like, way too symbolic at that time, but at the same time, we don't know what Pokemon ended up burning up. And the other interesting thing is Type Null, that we still don't know the Pokemon that Type Null is created from, so once we get Korokoro or some more Type Null information, this theory might expand even more, and that's going to be absolutely nuts. So if you guys enjoyed the video, leave your comment down below. Do you think it's Eevee still? Do you think it's another Pokemon? Do you think it's something from the 12th generation of Pokemon we'll never see, or something crazy like that? Or was it Entei, Raikou, and Suicune all along? Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.